Let us begin by honoring the dead. Put your left hand on your heart if you feel comfortable doing so. This is for all those who gave their lives for freedom, those who were erased from photographs, those who never fit into the category of normal, those whose existence alone was treated as a threat, especially the women who were too loud, too curious, too free, too embodied, too wild, too alive. They were not killed because they were weak. They were killed because they refused to obey. We honor your courage, your courageous heart, because it beat for justice and freedom. Your shiny souls, for they stepped forward for all of humanity. We thank you. And this is for all those who are now imprisoned in their fight for justice and freedom, unsure of their next hour, fighting to remain strong and sane. We hold you dear to our hearts. You are not forgotten. We will be your voices and shine light on your existence. You are not alone. We thank and honor your courage and send you the light and warmth of our hearts, right here, right now, because love knows no boundaries and can travel time and space. We love you. You are not alone. Consider a theory, a pattern so consistent across every continent, every century, every culture, that it demands an explanation. Man cannot give life. They participate in its creation briefly, and then the mystery continues without them. In a body that is not theirs, through a process they cannot control, towards a moment of arrival they can witness but never own. For 9 months, the most fundamental act of human continuity happens entirely beyond male reach. That is an enormous power to stand next to and not possess. So ask yourself, what does a creature do when it encounters power it cannot access? When it cannot own the thing itself, what does it build instead? It builds a God. Not just any God, an invisible, absolute, unquestionable authority. One that exists beyond evidence and outside challenge. One that speaks conveniently only through text written by man, interpreted by man, enforced by man. One whose primary concern turned out to be, with remarkable consistency across faiths and centuries, the regulation of women's bodies, sexuality, reproduction, and movement. The womb was the first power. God was the answer to it. And every law written in his name about what she wears, who she marries, whether she can leave, what she does with her own flesh, is not divine revelation. It is the oldest insecurity in human history, dressed in robes and given a throne. No, it's okay. Before we call something blasphemy, we should ask who defined the sacred and why. Every blasphemy law in every culture, in every century, protects the same thing. Not God, not the divine, not truth. It protects authority dressed as God. It protects the man who built the institution, wrote the rules, interpreted the text, and then declared that questioning them was equivalent to questioning heaven itself. That is not faith. That is a power structure with better lightning. Blasphemy at its deepest, is not about profanity. It's not about shock or offense or desecration for its own sake. At its core, blasphemy is the act of refusing to treat a human construction as if it were untouchable. It is the moment a person looks at the emperor's sacred robes and says out loud, in public, at personal cost, "I see no robes." It's truth-telling in a system that has criminalized truth. Every woman who uncovered her hair when law demanded it covered was a blasphemer. Every enslaved person who claimed their own humanity in a theology that denied it was a blasphemer. Every scientist who followed evidence into territory the church had fenced off as forbidden was a blasphemer. Every queer person who loved openly inside a tradition that called that love an abomination was a blasphemer. They were not attacking the divine. They were attacking the institution that had kidnapped the divine and held it hostage to justify control. This is where religion and fascism and patriarchy converge into a single system. They all require the same thing, a truth so sacred it cannot be questioned. For theocracy, that truth is scripture, interpreted always by those already in power. For fascism, that truth is the nation, the race, the leader, elevated beyond critique into the realm of the holy. For patriarchy, that truth is the natural order, the idea that hierarchy between men and women is not constructed, but God-given, biological, inevitable, eternal. All three systems use the same weapon against dissent. You have no right to question this. And when that fails, you will be punished for questioning this. Blasphemy laws are where all three systems shake hands. This is why free expression is not a liberal luxury. It is load-bearing infrastructure for human dignity. The moment a society decides that certain ideas are too sacred to examine, it has handed a blank check to whoever controls the definition of sacred. And history shows us with exhausting consistency exactly how that check gets spent on women's bodies, on minority communities, on dissidents, on the inconvenient, on anyone whose existence contradicts the story the powerful need to tell about why they deserve their power. So when someone commits what an institution calls blasphemy, when they draw the cartoon, write the poem, remove the veil, speak the doubt out loud, refuse the ritual, name the abuse inside the holy building, they are not doing something trivial. They are doing something ancient and necessary and deeply human. They are saying, this system is not God. This system is human. And because it is human, it can be questioned, challenged, changed, and if necessary, dismantled. That is not the destruction of the sacred. That is the recovery of it. The truly sacred, if such a thing exists, but I think it exists, does not need courts and laws and punishments and shame to survive. It does not need to control women's bodies or silence poets or imprison journalists or burn books or issue death sentences for questions. What needs that kind of protection was never holy. It was only ever afraid. And fear, disguised as God, is the oldest political trick in human history. So name it, question it, refuse it, not because you're not afraid, but because the women who came before us were afraid too, and they spoke anyways. They uncovered their hair anyway. They wrote the poem anyway. They walked into the courtroom, the parliament, the street, the future anyway. They were called blasphemers. I hope history calls them something else, the beginning. And now it's our turn. Every system of sacred power eventually arrives at the same threshold, the female body. Not because theology demands it, but because control does. When religion calcifies into institution, when faith becomes law, the first casualty is always women's autonomy. The veil mandated, the hair covered, the voice lowered, the testimony halved. This is not incidental, it is architectural. Control over reproduction is control over the future. Control over women's movement is control over social space itself. The female body becomes the territory where orthodoxy plants its flag. And blasphemy laws follow the same logic. They protect the powerful from scrutiny while punishing those who question. And who questions most dangerously? Those the system already excludes. Women who refuse modesty codes are already blasphemous against gender, against order, against God as institution. There is something revealing in how reliably this pattern repeats across cultures, centuries, faiths. It suggests that what is being protected was never quite divine. The sacred, after all, should not require woman's submission to survive. All of this was never about heaven. It was always about earth and who gets to own it. You know, we here in the West, we tell ourselves a comfortable story, that theocracy is elsewhere, far away, in dusty courtrooms under foreign suns, in countries we locate on maps with a certain relieved distance. This doesn't happen here. We are modern. We are past this. But we are not past this. Fascism does not announce itself with a manifesto. It arrives through aesthetics, nostalgia, strength, purity, order. It speaks of greatness while meaning hierarchy. And when it consolidates, when the performance of power hardens into policy, it finds the same ancient lever every authoritarian system has always found, the female body. Watch the pattern in real time. Roe versus Wade was not an accident, it was a signal. Abortion bans do not emerge from genuine moral anguish, they emerge from the same impulse that mandates the veil. We will decide what you do with your own flesh. The language differs, the mechanism is identical. European conservatism wraps itself in secularism while importing the same architecture. Traditional values, family structures, birth rates as national duty. Women praised for motherhood, the tradwives, the same breath they are denied agency over it. Fascism needs a body to discipline before it can discipline a nation, and it has always chosen hers first, the women's. Because if you can make half the population ask permission to exist in their own skin, the other half has already learned to obey. The border between there and here was always thinner than we wanted to believe. The patriarchy is not a monster hiding under the bed. It is the bed. It is the architecture of ordinary life. Who interrupts whom? Who is believed? Who is promoted? Who does the invisible labor? Who gets to take up space without apology? Who has to make themselves smaller to be loved? You cannot dismantle a system you refuse to see fully. So here is the call. realize that all of these systems are one and the same. See it, name it, every time. In meetings, at dinner tables, in laws, in language, in the casual cruelty of low expectations. Support women in power, not as charity, but as correction. Centuries of stolen authority being partially returned. The dismantling of patriarchy is not a women's issue any more than the liberation from slavery was solely a black issue. Oppressive systems dehumanize everyone they touch, including those they reward. No man is free inside a system that requires the subjugation of half of humanity to function. That freedom is a cage with better furniture. This is not a moment for despair, and it's not a moment for comfort. It's a moment for clear eyes, difficult conversation, and a kind of stubborn, unglamorous, daily resistance that doesn't trend, but actually changes things. History is not something that happens to us. It's something we either make or allow. Choose.
Welcome everybody to the Balie, and welcome to our program, Blasphemy versus the State, Dissenting Women, a program which is generously supported by Het Fonds. We just had Nasmi Oral, a writer, a performer, and with her work, she gives voice to the people who are often not heard, who are ignored, and she invites us for a nice little uncomfortable, uneasy conversations, especially when it comes to faith, identity, freedom, and belonging. Thank you again, Nasmia.
Thank you.
My name is Baram Sadeghi, and I have the great honor and maybe greater responsibility to be your moderator, your host tonight. And as you can hear, English is not my first language. And as a matter of fact, you know, for someone who is born in Iran, raised in Iran, and now living for 40 years in Holland, I have no idea what my first or second language is, but as long as you give me the idea and I can look at your eyes that you can understand me, do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, okay, good. Then I feel comfortable to go on, and it probably goes for everybody who is joining us. You know, almost nobody native speaker of English. Enough about me. This evening we talk about the close link between blasphemy, laws, and state power, especially what happens when women speak out against religious, political, or cultural norms, and why in heaven's name these laws so often put women who dissent at the center of the controversy. Before I invite our next lecturer, we have two, to the stage, just a couple of practical issues. Please don't forget to put your phone on silent mode. And this program, including the Q&A, will be live streamed. So if you don't want to be on the camera, please take that into account. And finally, we have a photographer, Victoria. So if she's walking around, maybe blocking your view for 2 seconds, please give her that room so she can take the greatest picture she can take. So tonight we start with 2 lecturers, and after that I will have a conversation with 4 panel members, and after that at least for 25 minutes room for your questions. Now, I would like to invite Yasmin Rahman to the stage. Yasmin, where? Please, and give her a big applause. And please allow me to introduce her, a specialist in violence against women and girls and intersection of faith, race, and gender. She has worked in a lot of countries. Just let's name UK, India, Pakistan, Sweden, Germany, and South Africa. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. If I wasn't intimidated before, I am now, because Nazmi, it just gave me goosebumps. That was incredible. I want to begin by extending a heartfelt thanks to Balie, to Senna in particular, my fellow panelists and speakers, and to all of you for being here for this much-needed and incredibly important event. I stand here in solidarity with dissidents and activists from across the world to challenge oppressive laws, to campaign for our rights to freedom of expression, freedom of conscience and belief, and freedom from belief without fear of violence, arrest, or persecution. I do so as a Muslim and as a human rights activist. Today, as always, I remember all those who have lost their lives, have been sentenced to death, and who are languishing in prisons because of blasphemy laws. These laws privilege dominant religious orthodoxies by limiting freedom of expression and dissent, which encourages reform and a shift towards human rights principles. I can't recall a time when the boundaries of freedom of speech and the freedom and right to protest have been the focus of such public and political debate. It seems that not a day goes by when there is not some comment about freedom of speech or the lack thereof. Yet at the same time, it seems that there is a backlash against the international human rights regime in many parts of the world. It has become extremely difficult and often dangerous to stand up for the rights of oneself or for the rights of others. There have been an increase in the number of reprisals against human rights defenders and calls for a rolling back of human rights legislation in countries across the world, and including the UK, where I'm from. Amidst all of this, there is the case of Ibtissame Lachgar, which goes to the heart of the debate about freedom of speech and freedom of conscience. And yet her case and those of countless others have received far less attention than I and others think it deserves. Betty's case is shocking, and it raises significant questions about the application of blasphemy laws and the boundaries of jurisdiction of those countries which still have these horrific, outdated laws on their statutes books. We heard from Ghislaine earlier today, and she gave the detail of Betty's case, so I'm not going to go into that. But I have some questions to pose. What does Betty's case mean for those of us who protest the treatment of women, LGBTQI plus communities, and minorities in countries where blasphemy laws remain? Can we too be arrested and imprisoned should we travel to these countries? Are there no boundaries for blasphemy laws? Why is the international community silent, not just on Betty's case, but on so many others? Betty's case raises questions about the right to freedom of expression and freedom of and from religion and belief. This fundamental right to hold and express opinions, to receive and impart information and ideas without censorship or interference from the state, is protected under international law, including the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the Human Rights Act. Rejecting religious control is an act of resistance, just as rejecting all forms of abuse, discrimination, oppression, and persecution is and must remain. Freedom of religion and freedom from religion are protected under these international instruments. However, the countries that still have blasphemy laws on their statute books, and those that are silent, do not see the conflict between these international instruments and the presence of blasphemy laws. I want to talk a little bit about blasphemy laws in the Pakistani context, but making reference to Betty's case. The reason I've chose Pakistan is that is where my parents originate from. I was looking for the number of people in prison for blasphemy worldwide, and I couldn't find a number. And that in itself is really worrying, because we need that data in order to know how do we campaign, where do we campaign, and who do we campaign for. But there is some data for Pakistan, which has been produced by the US Commission on International Religious Freedom, and also from the Human Rights Commission in Pakistan. There has been a massive surge in cases in Pakistan. In 2025, reports indicate that well over 750 individuals are currently in prison on blasphemy charges, and that is just one country. According to reports in early 2025, there were 750 people, as I've said, at least 680 prisoners in the Punjab alone. Arrests for online blasphemy in Pakistan surged from just 11 in 2020 to over 760 by mid-2024, with new arrests happening every day. Online entrapment, as happened in Betty's case, is now a significant trend, and we've seen an increasing use of online entrapment schemes, particularly targeting young men in universities who are lured into conversations and subsequently arrested for alleged blasphemous content, frequently driven by blasphemy business networks aimed at extortion. And the links between these blasphemy business networks and the Islamist movements cannot be ignored. Blasphemy is also a tool in land disputes and access to resources such as water. Some of you will have heard of the case of Asia Bibi, the Pakistani Christian woman who spent years on death row after being convicted of blasphemy, and who is now living in Canada. She's just about to release her memoir, Enfant Libre, which, finally free, which will recount her time in jail and her brutal treatment. She was collecting water from a well. There was a dispute over access to the water in the well, and she was accused of blasphemy and spent years in prison. But it is not just the state that we need to be aware of and need to be mindful of. Mob rule in Pakistan has also taken over, where the state does not intervene or chooses not to intervene. The mob takes over. Individuals, mobs, and groups linked to extremist groups have been involved in the killing and murder of people that they think are guilty of blasphemy. And that has happened in Pakistan, and it's happened in Nigeria with the stoning to death of Usman Buddha and of Deborah Samuel. It's a time to be afraid, but it's also a time to stand. Humanist International have been looking at this issue and recently published a report, Freedom of Thought, in 2024, which looks at states' record of upholding the rights of humanists, atheists, and the non-religious around the world. Sadly for me, they didn't include also looking at religious people of faith who also dissent. Andrew Copson says in the introduction of this report, where blasphemy laws are enforced, no one, whatever their religion or belief, is immune to persecution. Beyond their use in a court of law, their existence justifies, enables, and promotes discrimination, ostracism, and vigilante violence. Now more than ever, we must work together to ensure the repeal of blasphemy laws globally in favour of the promotion of dialogue and mutual respect for everyone's right to freedom of religion or belief. There are 89 countries in the world that have blasphemy laws on their statute books. That's 57% of the global population could be affected by these laws. 12 of these countries still have the death penalty in place. The Human Rights Commission in Pakistan has been campaigning for decades for an end to blasphemy laws and for removal from the Pakistani statute books. But on the one hand, whilst they campaign, you see mob-led assaults on religious minorities' homes and sites of worship, the persistent desecration of Ahmadiyya graves and arbitrary detention of community members, and the increased vulnerability of Hindu and Christian women and girls forced to convert to Islam. The Human Rights Commission of Pakistan report indicates that over 750 people were incarcerated on charges of blasphemy as of October 24, and there have been at least 4 faith-based killings, 3 of which targeted the Ahmadiyya community. This increase, I think, in the use of the blasphemy laws, I think, is fueled by disinformation on social media. We have to be wary of social media in so many contexts. It's used to incite violence, it's used to incite murder, it's used to incite the targeting of politicians, as in the case of Salman Taseer. It's also used to cross boundaries, and I mentioned earlier, it is used not just in those countries but elsewhere. In 2015, in the UK, we saw the murder of Glasgow shopkeeper Asad Shah, an Ahmadiyya Muslim, by a Sunni Muslim, Tanveer Ahmed, for so-called disrespecting Islam. In Bangladesh, there was a hit list of secularists, bloggers, writers, and activists that went viral in 2015, calling for their murder as blasphemers. This list is being added to constantly, and other countries are compiling their own lists. So Betty is not alone, sadly. There are others. And we must shine a light on those cases, and I want to talk about one of those cases now. It is the case of Junaid Hafiz, an academic who was a teacher at Bahauddin Zakaria University in Multan in the Punjab. That's where my great-grandfather taught maths. He was a Fulbright scholar. He completed his master's in Jackson, Mississippi at Jackson State University, but returned to Pakistan because he wanted to make a difference. He graduated in English literature, and his thesis was writing an ethnographic study of masculinity in popular cinema in Pakistan. He was accused of making derogatory comments about the Prophet in a Facebook group and of hosting the British Pakistani writer Kesra Shiraz. He was targeted by the Islamist groups Islami Jamaat Talaba, which is a student group which is affiliated to the Jamaat-e-Islami, and Tariq Tahafuz Enamus Irasalat, who opposed Hafiz's more liberal teachings. They distributed pamphlets calling for him to be arrested and hanged, and staged a strike. Hafiz was quickly expelled and his housing and his teaching contracts revoked. He was arrested in March 2013 and has been in solitary confinement in prison in Pakistan since 2014. In 2019, he was sentenced to death. His lawyer, Rashid Rahman, was murdered for defending him, and subsequent lawyers have received numerous death threats. The Lahore High Court is due to hear the appeal against Junaid's death sentence on the 19th of March. Please remember him in this coming month. Junaid's story isn't a story of one man's questionable imprisonment. It's the tale of a broken justice system, of the power of extremist groups, of murder and violence, and of the dangers of speaking out in a country where the line between free speech and blasphemy is dangerously blurred. But it is not only these boundaries that are blurred. The boundaries of blasphemy legislation are also dangerously blurred, as Betty's case so evidently shows. I'm too aware of the dangers of speaking out for those of us from diaspora communities living in the West. I know that after today, I, like others, Mariam included, will no doubt receive comment and condemnation for calling for an end to blasphemy laws everywhere. As a Muslim woman and as a woman of colour, my commitment to the fight for freedom, justice and equality has been shaped and reinforced by my beliefs and has grown as some of those beliefs have been challenged, including by some here today. Thank you, Mariam, for taking me on a journey. I cannot, in all consciousness, call for an end to misogyny, racism, anti-Muslim hatred, and stand by silently when it comes to other forms of discrimination, oppression, and persecution. I want to end with a reminder for us all and a call to action. You all know the poem by Pastor Martin Niemöller. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. We all know how things ended and the terrible price paid by those across the world in the camps and fighting in Europe, Asia, and Africa during World War II. We also know of the terrible price paid in the aftermath of the empire as colonial powers reluctantly relinquished their hold on their former colonies. The time for action is now, before it is too late. So I call you to action, to stand in solidarity and fight for Betty, Junaid, and the hundreds of others. They may not look like you, but they live amongst you. They may not believe what you believe, but we all must have the right to be free. Thank you.
Just a very brief question before I invite the next lecturer. You mentioned the case of Betty Lachgar, the Moroccan activist. She's imprisoned because she wore a T-shirt abroad in the United Kingdom in support of two Iranian women with Allah is a lesbian. And then I'm paraphrasing, then you said something like, should we fear people who are supporting her? Should I fear of traveling to countries where decent women put in jail because of blasphemy laws? It was a great question. And if I ask you the same question on a Saturday night in Amsterdam, rainy night, what would you say?
I absolutely support Betty, and I stand along.
I understood that.
Yeah.
But how about shall we fear?
I think people are afraid. There are people who want to support her, and they are afraid. I write and I dissent and I campaign, and I am afraid. I do not think I will ever go to Pakistan again. I do not think I would ever dare try to visit some Muslim countries, others maybe, because I am afraid of the arms of the law, the rule of the mob. But I live in the UK, and I fear for myself in the UK and for people like me. The UK is also not safe. We live in a world of binaries where it sometimes feels like if you speak out against from within a community, that you are automatically labelled as an Islamophobe.
Yeah.
But there is a rich history of dissent within our communities, and dissent helps us grow and learn and evolve as a species. And dissent is to be celebrated. You don't have to agree with me. Yeah. I don't care if people don't agree with me. That's their right, and I have the right to my opinions. But I may be afraid, but I will not stop.
Wow, I may be afraid, but I'm not stop. And by the way, we will talk definitely about that topic you just touched on, the having Islam or religion critic, but at the same time, not get involved in the right extreme or right or left extreme poles. On that note, I would like to ask Mariam Namazi to go to the podium. Thank you, Mariam. She's a writer and spokesperson of One Love for All and the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's, as you said, very hard to follow. Now I've got two great acts to follow. And I think actually a lot of the things we're saying are very similar, because this is something that we've grappled with for a very long time. I do also want to remember all those who've been killed. Also, most recently in Iran, people who have struggled against theocracy, and of course across the globe. It's important to remember that there are real victims and real survivors, and despite all of that, the resistance continues. Blasphemous, corrupt, apostate, kafir, these are words that have always been defined from the perspective of the religious. The religious lens is always treated as if it's neutral, as if it's the default. So automatically, blasphemy is seen to be harm, at best offensive, at worst a threat to morality, stability, and even national security. I have lost count the many times that I have been accused of enmity against God, of insulting religion. Sure, I have. Of wounding fragile sensibilities, yes. And of course, Islamophobia. But for me, these accusations are instruments of power. They shift the ground from politics to piety, from power to offense. And Nazmia really explained this so well. They turn dissent into something that's holy so that it can no longer need to defend itself. It just has to punish. Conversely, when we talk about blasphemy, it's the insistence that nothing is beyond question. But we are told day in and day out that blasphemy laws are necessary to protect God, to protect faith, to protect feelings, prevent violence. And each claim collapses when you examine it. If you believe in an all-powerful God, do you truly think that he requires penal codes to defend him? Isn't that idea blasphemous in and of itself? If the purpose is to protect religion, which religion? Religions declare others false, corrupt, heretical. All claim exclusive truth. Who decides which interpretation deserves protection? In Pakistan, as Yasmin mentioned, Ahmadiyas are persecuted under blasphemy laws for identifying as Muslims. Blasphemy laws don't resolve any of these conflicting positions. They select one and back it with the full force of the law. And to those who say the purpose is to protect feelings, whose feelings count? The Baha'is in Iran, ex-Muslims who are condemned by the Quran and by the Hadith, women facing stoning or polygamy, LGBTQ plus people who are labeled sinful. Offense is not neutral. Power decides which offense matters. And we are told blasphemy laws prevent violence. In fact, they incentivize it. Ibtissame Lachgar is in prison for a T-shirt. Those who threatened her with rape and death are free. The state rewards threats with censorship and persecution and shifts responsibility onto the dissenter. This logic extends beyond states with explicit blasphemy laws. England and Wales, where I live, have abolished blasphemy laws in 2008. Yet there's a case right now involving the public burning of the Quran, and authorities are relying not on previous blasphemy laws, but on public order legislation. But such questions raise an important question. Why is irreverence towards religion treated as uniquely dangerous and destabilizing in ways that irreverence towards other ideologies is not? When religion is shielded from criticism and other doctrines are not, blasphemy laws return through the back door, even if they've been abolished. If peaceful expression provokes threats like Ibtissame Lachgar's Allah is lesbian T-shirt, and the speaker is blamed, she is blamed, this is not preventing violence, it is surrendering to it. However you package it, blasphemy laws is a mechanism of state control. It turns doubt and dissent into crime. It turns authority into something sacred, so that criticizing it becomes an act of immorality rather than an act of politics. When religion fuses with state power, this is very explicit. Law is framed as divine command. And the moment it's labeled sacred, it has privilege. Any decision it makes is harder to challenge. It's harder to reverse. Yet human progress and political change throughout history has depended on scrutinizing, challenging, and rejecting the sacred. Monarchs used to claim divine right. They still do. Churches dictated laws. Slavery was defended through scripture. Expansions of equality have required confronting institutions that claim sacred authority. Consider the witch hunts of the 15th to 17th century Europe. Thousands of women were burned, tortured, executed, legally sanctioned, and religiously approved assaults on women's bodies. Women who defied prescribed roles, who refused submission, who lived outside male control were branded as heretical and murdered. With devices like the skull's bridle, which was an iron muzzle that was forced into the mouth so that women would be silenced. I truly think that the hijab today is the fabric version of this skull's bridle. The claim by some that religion is identity and therefore criticism is an attack on people also collapses under its own logic. If identity alone justifies immunity from criticism, then any ideology that shapes identity, including nationalism, would be beyond challenge. Democratic politics depends on the right to question all ideologies. Undoubtedly, equal protection under the law is essential for everyone, but equal protection means protecting people from discrimination and violence. It doesn't mean shielding doctrines from criticism. Protecting believers and protecting beliefs are not the same thing. Individuals deserve protection, ideas do not. Hate speech targets people. Blasphemy challenges doctrines and ideas. Blasphemy laws are not only about regulating speech, they are about a wider social order. Sacred authority does not operate abstractly. It is embedded in sex-based norms. The family is one of its central sites. In patriarchal systems, property and status pass through male lines. That requires controlling women's sexuality. Family law enforces this through marriage, inheritance, and guardianship. Women are positioned as daughters, wives, and mothers because these roles stabilize lineage and belief. This is not only about tradition and religion, it has a material function. The patriarchal family reproduces property, status, and labor power across generations. When doctrine underpins family law, sex-based hierarchy acquires sacred legitimacy. Norms are framed as divine rather than historical. And when women publicly reject what is defined as sacred, they interrupt the reproduction of authority, which is treated as betrayal. Women's compliance stabilizes the system. Their dissent destabilizes it. Blasphemy laws, of course, punish men too, but when women's dissent, they challenge both religious authority and sex-based hierarchy at the same time. The threat is double, because the system depends on women's compliance. Women are treated as blasphemous even before they speak. Their existence is regulated and segregated to prevent fitna or chaos in society. In such systems, being a woman is in and of itself an act of blasphemy. Their bodies, their hair, their voices, their sexuality are treated as deviations from a male norm. They are not recognized as autonomous subjects, but as extensions of male guardians and honor. Before they speak, they are already transgressive. Women's blasphemy exposes that the sacred order depends on women's obedience. That is why it is so violently opposed. A blaspheming woman is framed as dishonorable. Punishment is sexualized, rape threats, stoning fantasies, bodily humiliation. The message is clear. Your body belongs to the order that you have challenged. And women's blasphemy, we often, when we talk about blasphemy, it's always about men. Very few situations do you see women blasphemers, because women's blasphemy has been erased from official histories. Women who resisted sacred authority were labeled immoral, hysterical, possessed, dishonorable. Their dissent was recorded as pathology or sin rather than blasphemy and resistance. The imprisonment of Ibtissame Lachgar in Morocco illustrates this. She is serving a 30-month sentence for posting a photograph wearing a T-shirt reading "Allah is lesbian" that was taken in London. The slogan is a feminist slogan that challenges the assumption that God must be male and male authority is natural. For that peaceful expression, she has been imprisoned, mistreated, and risks losing her arm due to serious health complications. But those who threatened her, they walk free. It is Betty who is punished. This disparity is how the system works. It relies on prosecution, not only on prosecution, but on fear. People silence themselves when they see what could happen to others. Punishment teaches everyone the limits of speech. The right to blaspheme, therefore, is not marginal. It is what keeps power answerable. And when women blaspheme, they also expose sacred hierarchy as a construction, making equality and liberation imaginable. Blasphemy laws protect power by declaring it sacred and disciplining those who refuse to submit. They remove authority from politics and place it beyond challenge. They convert dissent into crime. Women's blasphemy does the opposite. It exposes sacred authority as human, as historical. It interrupts the reproduction of obedience. It refuses the demand that women carry, transmit, and protect hierarchy in the name of religion. When women blaspheme in Iran, in Afghanistan, in the region, and across the world, they dismantle the mechanism that keeps power untouchable. A society that punishes women for blasphemy is not defending God or belief. It is defending domination. When women speak, they are told that they provoke. When women dissent, they are told that they destabilize. When women refuse obedience, they are told they blaspheme. But a society that cannot tolerate women's blasphemy is built on fear. And a society that can tolerate and even celebrate it is built on freedom. Thank you.
Okay, we just heard 3 keynote speeches, all different angles on stage. And shortly after our program, we will have the final keynote speaker on stage, but with a performance, a musical performance. But for now, she's with us in the room. May I have, please, Faravas Farvardin. Faravas, would you please join us here? Iranian-born, based in Berlin, singer, performance, activist, and not a taxi driver.
Yes, not.
Okay, of course. Now, not everybody has the time probably to look you up, to Google you. What's the story of not a taxi driver?
I just recognized after Islamic revolution 47 years ago in Iran, a lot of Iranians had to flee from Iran. And the first job was offered to them, and the easiest to find as an immigrant or refugee was becoming a taxi driver. Mm-hmm. And we flee, or we immigrate with a lot of talents and passion for doing what we like, but when we are living in a new country, we just fall into the circle of surviving and bringing bread on our table. And that's life. Not even only the people who flee, but a lot. This world pushes a lot of people to do what they don't like, and they don't have passion for it.
So that's the background of writing this song and the great video you made. I'm not a taxi driver.
I don't want to be a taxi driver.
I don't want to be a taxi driver. It was just great to watch that. Anyways, as an artist from Iran, what role did blasphemy take on in the musical scene over there? And could you describe how blasphemy was maybe related to dissent, and why the government cares so much about how it looks like, especially for women?
I mean, I cannot tell how it looked like in a musical way, because in Iran, just being a woman and just singing is already enough to go in prison for. And I never dared to sing about blasphemy in Iran. It was for me already enough to sing. And I've been sentenced to 1 year of prison because of singing, only singing. And I was singing with hijab even. And I think blasphemy is the next thing we can talk about, not in Iran maybe.
Yeah, okay.
What was an act of blasphemy?
Excuse me?
That's I think the point I was making is that the very fact of a woman's voice is blasphemous. And so you were actually committing an act of blasphemy, even
without
if you were not
knowing.
Even you were not.
Molla, molla, what you do here. Before.
Yasmin, that's a question for maybe all of you, but especially since you mentioned that. You spoke about the blasphemy legislations, which is incompatible with human rights, universality of the human rights. By the do you know of any cases where blasphemy legislation actually work to protect the weak?
No.
No.
This is an answer, no.
I just wanted to cover that. So,
No.
so it's never.
There is no place for blasphemy laws anywhere.
Yeah. Okay.
They just serve no purpose.
Yeah.
I guess that's like asking, is there any place that has stoning of women that helps women's rights? Or any place that has racial apartheid that's good for black people? I mean, I think it's an oxymoron, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we have covered that, because a lot of time, they mention that, that these laws, or maybe not the blasphemy laws, but, sometimes, they put it in anti-discrimination laws. Against, so they said we can protect minorities by those laws. You understand what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Would you please elaborate about
so
the reasoning and why
I mean,
it's not correct?
I think the thing is that there's so many reasons for it, but just briefly, one of the main reasons is this homogenization of communities and societies to the point that what the ruling class or the ruling mullahs say is then it makes it seem as if everyone agrees with that position. And therefore, to defend Muslim minorities, they say that we need to respect their religious beliefs. What it doesn't take into account is the fact that there are many people within that community who are ex-Muslims or who are socialists and feminists and free thinkers. So it homogenizes and usually imposes the most regressive idea on the community as a whole. And therefore, it's very often portrayed as a defense of minority rights, whereas it's really, it is a racism of lower standards, as you mentioned, because it's fine for white people to have freedom of expression and to be able to criticize religion and to be gay and to dress whatever the hell they want. But when it comes to minorities, we all need to live within the constructs of Islam and do as the mullah says, or the parasitical imam in that mosque over there says. And again, it is something that needs to be challenged. People need to understand that we're people first, and human rights is not a group right. I mentioned this earlier as well. It is not a right bestowed on us by a community or a group. You don't like what I say, it doesn't really matter, because freedom of expression is my right. Freedom of conscience is my individual right. And I will think and say as I please. You can just, I won't say that word again because I've already said it once.
Yasmin, would you like to add something?
I agree with what Mariam says. I think there is one thing that we have to really look at, and that is the trajectory within the West. And I make special reference to the UK, I think, here. And the role of religious leadership. The mullah in Pakistani Indian communities, you went to him to see, has the moon been sighted? Do we start fasting today? How many rakats should I pray for this namaz or that namaz? The war on terror has elevated religious leadership within the UK, and I think within other Western nations as well, to a position of dominance that it did not hold, and that they now have a control over the community in a way that it certainly didn't have when I was younger. I look at the Muslim community, which is not homogenous, it's it's global. Living in the UK, I do not recognise my own community anymore. The changing of dress codes, we have lost as Pakistanis those beautiful, vibrant colours that we used to wear, and women are now shrouded in black. Men may have had a moustache because some famous actor wore a moustache, and now everyone's got this long beard. The young men are wearing Arab dress, the Arabification of our language. It's almost like there is a shame in being anything other than this Arabized version. And when I say Arabized, I mean very Saudi, Wahhabi version of Islam.
The Salafistic or Wahhabi.
The Salafi, but it's also, I think it's seeped into Sunni Islam. You've got the Shias have got their own version with the theocracy. Even within the Ahmadiyya, who are a Muslim minority community, you've got very fundamentalist elements there as well. Yeah. But we have to unpick this increasing power base that religious leadership has and limit their voice. That's not denying them freedom, but giving them the freedom to speak, and then challenging and breaking apart some of the rubbish that they come out with.
Yasmin, if I may say something, you said, I don't recognize myself in my community. No. Believe it or not, maybe this is your community.
This is my community.
Yeah, all these people who don't look like you.
Yeah.
There is something that binds us, you know? Can I say that?
Yeah, we're human beings and
transcend us.
Yeah, but I was talking very specifically about, the diaspora community that I was born into, grew up in.
I understand. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can I just make a point on that? It is really the rise of the religious right that has homogenized communities, and it's not a true image of those communities, because there's dissent always. There is always dissent. Yeah. And I think the problem is because it has been homogenized, and very often those in power are seen to be representative of the so-called community, that we have this issue. And that's why blasphemy, and women's blasphemy in particular, is so crucial in pushing back that power base.
Okay. I have two topics I would like to discuss with you. So let's say about maybe 10 minutes, 12 minutes, and then questions from the audience, because after that we will have a performer. 9 o'clock in the Balie. It's a question, I don't know, maybe for Nazmia especially, and for you, because, you are in a way very soft and very gentle to Muslim community as well, Nevertheless, when you mentioned, those horrible examples, about blasphemy and those cases, religious laws, they were all associated one way or another with the Islamic religion. Why do you think it is, that when you think about, blasphemy or apostasy, geloofsafval, and the consequences, the bad consequences for those people, we more or less think about the Islamic religion. Now I'm looking at you, Nazmia. Now you have to respond. Yeah. And then you, and of course you too, yeah. But let's start with Nazmia.
Well, I think it's one of the few places where there is still this untouchable notion of, well, first of all, when you look at Islam, it's one of the few religions where the word of God is untouchable, literally. So it gives...
oh, you mean literally that you cannot insult Quran?
Yeah, you cannot... Yeah, that's why a lot of Muslims are divided also, One says, no, the hadith says this, so there's also a lot of division. Yeah. But it is part of the reason that that religion survived as it did till today, because it has been preserving some status of untouchableness. You had the same thing, of course, for Christianity not so long ago. So it is because of that, I think. Okay. But, yeah.
So the next question would be, is it fair? Is it,
what do you mean, is it fair?
Is it just that we think, when to myself, when I think about blasphemy, about apostasy, I think all about all these...
Oh, no, that was what I was trying to convey today, that, I was brought up Muslim, and for me, I don't like... I like to view all of us as humans, and I have my clear,
All of us? Really, all of us?
What do you mean?
I mean, there was a time, National Socialism, you consider them, what makes the difference between them and me and you when we are all humans?
I don't understand what you mean.
Anyways, belief versus people, she means whatever your belief, we're all humans. Oh. So even if you disagree, when you disagree, people are human.
National Socialist, well, I don't care. I take you as a human.
Yeah, but
even a neo-Nazi or whatever, we're all human, right? I'm getting pissed now.
Okay, go on.
Okay, and but that's why I try to convey that these things like fascism and like the blasphemy laws or people who want to shut you up are the same. That's why I think a lot of times in the West, people are very, very comfortable at looking at, for them, Middle Eastern countries and say, that problem is there. It's all happening there.
Far away from us.
But at the same time, we are here in Holland. I don't know how it is in Britain, but you cannot say that genocide is being done. You cannot say, I want to have the right to my own body. You cannot say, this is fascist, you are neo-Nazi, blah, blah, blah. You are shut up. It is the same mechanism. So,
You want to add something to this?
I do. I think we are right to criticise Islam, but I think it has to be looked at through the lens of the rise of the Islamist movements and the money that Saudi Arabia particularly has, and this battle for power and domination that has gone on between Iran, and Saudi, particularly in other countries, then getting involved. It's money, it's power, and religion is the vehicle that they are using. And very conveniently, Islam has what Nazmi absolutely rightly said, the Quran is the word of God, it is unchanged. How many Muslims absolutely believe that? I wouldn't want to say. There has always been, over 1,500 years, dissent. There are LGBT plus community members who are Muslims. There are feminists, people from every background. It's not, it's a global movement. And I think that's why it's more terrifying. Yes, we need to focus on Islam, but do not, at your peril, take your eyes off what's happening elsewhere. We've seen the rise of the religious right in the United States. And, Zionism, Zionism and what that is doing. There is not a day goes by when a Muslim boy or young man is not lynched in India. You've got the attacks on
Hindus.
By Hindus. You've got the attacks on Sikhs. Again by Hindus. So I think, the Rohingya Muslims, the Uyghur, at our peril do we take our eye off the ball.
And let's not forget our situation in the West as well. As you mentioned, for example, we had in Holland until 12 years ago, we had blasphemy laws in Holland. And right now, in country where you're living, in Germany, the paragraph 166 of the Criminal Code, Strafbook, which prohibits publicly insulting or defaming religious or ideological communities, right now in Germany.
But I would say to people of faith, and I have my faith, if your faith is so weak that someone criticizing your ideas means that you have to put them in prison, the issue is not what they said, it's that your belief in God is so weak that maybe you need to be looking inwards and not outwards.
Something like you said. By the way, is it something that worrying you that there are still countries, as I said, like Germany, that they have these laws still that which can be used? The last time they used it, in a way, was about 20 years ago, 2006. But is it something that worrying you, or is it something that you see as a relic? It used to be. Please tell why.
Can I just go back to something though before that? Is that
definitely?
Okay? I mean, I think look, a lot of us are focusing on Islam because it's our background, right? And the reality is that the only countries that punish apostasy and blasphemy or atheism with death are Islamic states. So that's clear. There's nearly a dozen that do that. So obviously, when we're speaking about blasphemy, we are talking about Islamic states, but they're not the only. There are 58 countries, as the information on this brochure said, and that do have blasphemy laws. There's shunning, ostracization, loss of citizenship rights, imprisonment, including European countries. Right now, in the UK, we have a case of a Quran burning. I don't think we should burn books, but fine, if you're going to do it, I don't think you should be in prison for it. And if you are going to burn a book, well, the Quran's the best one to burn. But I do want to say that we have to recognize the fact that when we're talking about Islamic states today, they are similar to, as you mentioned, during the Inquisition and when the church was in power. And what happened then was not that the Bible became really nice to women and to gay people, it's because it was pushed out of political power. And that is exactly what needs to be done with Islam as well. And that's why what's happening in Iran today is so crucial. It is a political movement, and if it brings an Islamic State to its knees, it will have huge repercussions. So I do want to also add that, yes, there are, as Yasmin mentioned, Buddhists. The Buddhists are always, oh, they're so lovely. But the Buddhist right in friggin' Myanmar are killing Muslims. You know, they're not so lovely, and they're wearing their little monk robes as well while they do it. So there is that link there with the religious right. The other thing, but I do know what you're getting at, and this is how the far right and the fascists use Islam, use Sharia courts,
Yes.
use the grooming gangs, for example, because minorities have raped and done sexual assault against children and women.
That was a big issue, very big issue.
It's a big issue.
United
But that
Kingdom.
same far right is silent on Epstein.
Yeah.
It's silent on the pedophilia in the church. They are using it not because they give a shit about women, but because they want to attack migrants and they want to attack Muslims. And I do agree that there is that issue, but that can't stop us from speaking.
No.
And the thing I always say is you should be able to challenge fundamentalism without ignoring racism, and you should challenge racism without ignoring fundamentalism. It's not rocket science. You can fight for women's rights, you can fight for gay rights, you can fight against Islamic rules, you can fight against Christianity in power. You can do it all. And that's where I think a lot is missing, is this treating Islamic fundamentalists with kid gloves while they are murdering and slaughtering entire generations in our region, and also limiting our right to live, to breathe, and particularly as women. So we need to challenge on many fronts.
Yeah. Final question before I go to the audience. Farawaz, is this discussion, because as I said, I looked you up, watched your clips, everything, and in my opinion, you think it's very urgent, this discussion about decent women in Europe. Why? Why is that so urgent, necessary to still fight for those rights? While we are living in the West, the free.
I want to first of all add something.
Please.
I was not scared of doing it only in Iran. I'm honestly really scared of when I'm doing it here, and I'm still shocked how I can play my mullah songs sometimes. Sometimes I feel like I'm dreaming and it's not true, it's not real. And it is really scary to criticize, I think, in general religions, especially Islam, because as they told, it's like really untouchable, and it's holy, and we don't have the right to do it. And it's ignored by a lot of white feminists that what is happening in Iran, and how Islam can be brutal to women. And I was boycotted a lot of times, and yeah, she's too political. Yeah, of course. Germans are really like conservative people, and they just don't want to be involved with other countries' issues because they had a war and they want to stay peaceful people when they are not.
I see. Okay.
And it's like you won't be invited to the biggest festivals to play, and because you are, as they told, you might be called Islamophobe, even if you were sentenced because of Islamic laws to prison because of singing. And do
you take that into account when you are writing your songs that might get criticized by German conservatives?
I mean, at the beginning, not really, because I just was really angry and I was like, I don't give a shit. I just do what I was really scared of doing, and I don't regret it. I'm happy that I did it, because I couldn't just not do it. That was my dream in Iran. And like especially when we did, for example, the topless protest together with Mariam and Femen in Germany, it was my dream since I was a teenager in Iran. Yeah.
Was it in Köln?
Yeah.
It was in
Cologne?
Cologne,
Yeah. You topless,
in front of the
protest.
mosque.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it's not like we just scared of the Islamists or we just scared of West, white feminists or whatever. We are just really scared of our own community. Like for Iranian community, especially what I'm doing or what Mariam is doing is really provocative. It's really disrespectful.
Yes.
And
You get,
I mean, when you told like you not feel you're part of your community, I never felt even when I was in Iran that I'm part of the community and this is my homeland. When I moved from Iran to Germany, and when I started to be open, straight, provocative feminist, if you call it, I was boycotted from all the Iranian TV stations outside of Iran, all the opposition TV station, radio stations, festival, and it's just I never felt with my open-minded against Islamic regime of Iran, who are against them. I never felt that I'm a community with them because I was not accepted by them as well. And
they define you.
Yeah, can I just come in on that though?
Yeah.
And that will be the final note, then I will go to the... on it. No, please, finish.
So, as someone who dissents from within a faith, feminists in Britain would not give me a platform. I was never invited to speak. You know, the only person who ever gave me space was Mariam.
Ex-Muslim,
where I could go and stand there proudly as myself and say, you know, I want to campaign for sexual reproductive rights. I want to stand side by side with the LGBT community. I've got things to say, but you're shut down because you're anti-Muslim, you're an Islamophobe, and you're like, yeah, right.
That's exactly. You cannot say free Palestine and then say fuck Islamists. This is just it's somehow a human brain cannot think that you can support everybody's human rights and you can be against death and dictators in the same time. It's just so hard for some people to understand. I wanted to say you are not alone.
Thank you. No,
equally, neither are you.
Neither are you.
I told you, this is our community.
This is our
But I think we all find our community.
Yes.
That's
cool.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, please raise your hand. And Senna, the program editor, by the way, Senna, thank you very much for organizing this.
Yes.
Thank you. So please raise your hand and Senna will come to you. And please address your question if possible.
So many questions.
Yeah. Otherwise, I got a lot of questions here.
Where is the question?
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Thank you very much for that conversation. Yasmin, I was wondering what you said about community, but also in the previous conversation you said about young people becoming more conservative and that there's a worldwide backlash. And I was wondering, it's a big question, but what do you think young people find in that stricter, more right environment, not only in Muslim communities, but in general?
Yep, thank you.
I think it's like... I think it's like gangs. I do. I've worked on criminal justice issues for decades, and I see the parallels between the rise of the religious right and their bringing in of young people, giving them that sense of belonging. So where you've experienced racism, come to us, we will help you, we will make you feel like you belong. Giving them a sense of pride and an identity that is separate to their parents and that gives them power within a hierarchy that is very structured around age. None of that is an excuse for some of the behaviour of young people, particularly when they engage in violence. But I think we have to understand where they are at. And then I think the power of social media and the money that is being poured into the creation of these groups, particularly from outside. And one of them, I went to Kosovo about, I think now coming up for 7 or 8 years ago. And I remember speaking to young people there and looking at the gradual Islamization. You know, the building of a mosque, the wearing of the abayas, that subtle thing that happened in the UK the establishment of Sharia courts. We didn't need Sharia courts until apparently 1992. You know, women could dress modestly. We didn't need to be told. And then you've got Western companies feeding this identity, this whole identity politics. You know, you can see H&M and their Ramadan offer of modesty dress. Surely we can choose what to wear ourselves. Aren't we adults? Stop, you know. So I think there's a mix of things going on, but it is that creation of an identity in a place where you sometimes feel marginalised.
Yes, H&M had. Do they have modesty fashion for Muslims?
Not even most of the retail, big retailers, Marks and Spencers, H&M, Next, Dolce & Gabbana, all of them have modesty dress now.
It's all the business.
It's
all business.
the power of the brown pound.
Yeah, money talks.
And like
the brown pound.
You are, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. You wanted to add something?
I want to add a few things to this. I think that this is a huge and very important discussion. But
conservatism among
I think that's not true across the board, because I think you see a rising conservatism, based on my own experience, in the West, because I think it is because of the racism that young people face from minority communities, that they feel they don't have a place to belong and they become more conservative than their parents. And I noticed this a lot, even because I had my son very late. I was 39, so I'm nearly 60 now, and he's only 20. You know, so I'm like an old mom. But I raised him to always think that he was British, and that you are where you belong, and where you live, where you love, where you work. That is where you belong. You should never feel like a foreigner. But it's interesting how he feels more Iranian now, not because of the way we raised him, but because of the discrimination he faced at school. So I think there is a lot to say about that. And also a politics of ghettoization by Western governments. A policy of ghettoization,
Racism by neglect.
Racism by neglect, but also it is multiculturalism, not as a wonderful live policy, but as a policy of segregation and separation, and handing over minority communities to community leaders, the Muslim, cleric and the Islamic organizations. That's one aspect of it. But if you look in our regions, like in Iran, there is a huge anti-Islamic backlash in Iran. The burning of the veil, young people running up behind mullahs and throwing their turbans. In this most recent protest, the burning of mosques, the burning of Qur'ans. Yeah. So what I want to say is that there is and if you look at, because I started the ex-Muslim organization in 2007, and now, nearly 20 years on, there is a huge explosion of ex-Muslims, especially in the so-called Islamic world. There is a huge number of atheists. The Saudi government has equated atheism with terrorism. The Iranian government has said there's a tsunami of atheism in that country and secularism. Egypt has set up a ministry to deal with the youth's atheism. So this is a huge problem for Islamism. So I want to say that it's not across the board. I think Western governments need to think about their policies and how they've pushed so many young people whose parents are more progressive than their kids who were born in these countries. They have a lot to answer for in these politics. And I see that in my own family. The young ones who came here have become Islamists, and we are a secular family from Iran. It's because of the politics in these countries. So I think that's one issue. And just finally, I don't want to talk too much, but I am, of course, as always. Excuse me.
Very briefly.
It's identity politics. It's a politics that now you are no longer citizens before the law. You are not equal citizens before the law. It is all dependent on your identity. And based on that identity, that is the rights you get, that is the opportunity you get, and that is where you are boxed in for the rest of your life. And because of that, we are now no longer treating others as, it's
as she said,
the question. The fact that it raised a question for you when she said we're all human just shows how far identity politics has messed up our brains and our societies.
I get it. Yeah. Okay. Questions. Raise your hand. Over there. Over here. Yes. Over there. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yes, yes, please stand up. Yeah, great, yeah.
Thank you for all the lectures and words. Speaking of identity politics, I also want to ask a question to all of you about an identity crisis, maybe, because what I picked up from all of you is also this thing about being raised a Muslim, but always having to dissent throughout your life, and I identify with it as well as a queer Hindu person, being raised as a Hindu, and then you have to kind of dissent. So I want to ask about how these different identities clash, especially living in diasporic communities in the West. And do you ever have an identity crisis, or how do you deal with it?
Wow, it gets very personal. Yeah. So, who will?
Shall I go?
Only two responses. Yeah,
you go.
because
You go.
you make a very personal.
Well, I made a film and a theater play about this. Yeah, with my mother, and for me it was always very clear that whatever life I was going to choose, and I didn't even know what kind of life I was going to live. I only knew that this was not what I wanted. Mm-hmm. I was so happy that as a young girl at one point, something arose in me and I realized I was born in this community. This is my birthright. I am not going to allow you to push me out of this community because I want to co-shape the tradition that you impose upon me. I am part of this community, so I have equal rights to shape this tradition, to shape the future. And with my parents, I also had this epiphany. I didn't know where I got the courage from, that I was like, hang on a minute, I'm your daughter, goddammit, you know? You should be my mother. I just want to, I am who I am. You birthed me, so deal with it. And I think that's the intimacy we need. And intimacy takes courage, takes real effort to live together. It's very easy to say, I don't want to I don't want to say it's very easy for everybody to leave or whatever. I want to be respectful.
Yeah.
But it takes courage, and it's difficult to stay and to speak about the unspeakable and to demand intimacy and love. So, remind them that you are their kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that the documentary made about your film and your theater play is still on
YouTube.
YouTube, yes.
It's called. It's also English subtitled. Yeah. It's No Longer Without You.
Yeah, no longer. It's a very nice, uncomfortable clip to watch. Yeah, it's very nice. Very nice and uneasy. There was a question over here. Yes. Yeah. Are there more questions, by the way? Because as I said, within half an hour we'll have a performance. So, more questions? No.
Actually, it's not a
over
question.
There, yes, please go on.
Yeah, it's not a question. It's just I want to thank from bottom of my heart, like all of the, if I understood well, women here as a trans woman. Yeah. Each of you admire me, and 10 years ago I started being open and writing and questioning religion, specifically Islam. As someone who 7 years studied, I'm very afraid of now talking because of my parents, and I would not mention where I'm coming from and hope they're not seeing it. But I do not wait. I want long life for my parents, but I have plans after that what I'm going to do. I really want to be able to talk like each of you openly, criticize, and at the same time, I really admire specifically, everyone, you talking about that still, as an ex-Muslim, I talk about my community, but connection to my community, it's not religion anymore, but other things. I think that's fascinating because it also feels for me that's very dangerous. For me, calling myself ex-Muslim, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to deal with this. And also I'm going to want to mention about, I heard a lot today, we are in free West. I'm like, is it really free? For whom is it free? And also connection to the question that the person asked, Mariam, John answered very well, that I find here my transness in terms of constitutions is accepted, by my humanity is questioned, my color is questioned, my everything. My transness comes, I mean, I'm human before everything, like how you say it. So we have to definitely question all religions, and I hope, and also I want to mention this, that if you see in all religions, mostly benefits men. Even in English, we call he, like he, why it should be he. And it's very lovely to see how women from different backgrounds coming together and finding the community. And you cannot find easy this inside the man. And also, as a feminist, I would say that all religions are men benefiting them, and patriarchal world. So thank you very much, each of you.
Thank you for sharing this with us. You know, exactly what you said. Intimacy, it was very intimate, and courage came together. It's time. It's so.
Yes.
I'm so.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Can we have two final questions?
No.
You know, no, because you have to. You have
There's two
to.
questions.
No.
I'm
Okay.
joking.
Final 4 minutes. Go over there. Yes, that's the final question. Yes.
I have maybe a bit of a political question. I am not so sure how to say, but what should the state do? Maybe that's a bit of a big question, but we talked about state and blasphemy. So how should maybe the state protect those people who are suffering from blasphemy? And especially also, I know in the Netherlands now it's forbidden, for example, to wear a hijab, which is a sort of anti-blasphemy rule, which also maybe, yeah.
Okay, cool. I guess you understand. You are really, smart people. You understand the question. So let's start here.
Oh, no.
No? Okay.
Let's start there.
I'm happy.
Okay, Mariam and.
Shall I go?
You go ahead.
Okay, I think
She's dying to say something.
right. States repeal your blasphemy laws, repeal them, dump them in the bin of history, take it to the UN and get them repealed across the world and dismantle them. That's what they need to do. In terms of religious dress, I do think we need to do something about it. I do, and because we've just had World Hijab Day, and I'm so offended by it. And I hear Western feminists particularly going, well, let's don a hijab and I will defend the right of a woman to wear a hijab. Would some from those countries with those dress codes defend a Western woman's right to wear a bikini? It has to work both ways. And I think religious dress is about segregation and separation, and it also denies the cultural rights of the communities who are now being forced to wear it. Bring back the saris, bring back the shalwar kameez, bring back the colour, bring back our jewellery, our henna, bring it all back, dump the abayas, dump the hijab.
So let's wrap up with this great note, bring back the henna and
Bring it all back.
get rid of the abaya.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's first thank our members of panel, Nazmia, Faravas, Mariam, and Yasmin. And of course, thank you all for being here, listening, and engaging in the conversation. And let's not forget, thank again our program editor. Thank you so much, Sana. And of course, our technicians. You see one of them over there, the other one is upstairs. And of course, our photographer. As I said, 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock. So these are the other programs you might find interesting. At 9 o'clock, we will see Farawaz over there. And until then, because the Ramadan is now, we can eat and drink, freely, have a smoke, everything,
We only eat during the time that we're not allowed to. Now we refuse
now
to
we
eat.
can, now we refuse. And let's not forget, someone, smarter than probably I am, he said, you can measure the level of the civilization of a country by how the government treat the minorities. Mm-hmm. Let's have that in mind. And on that note, I will say, go in peace. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.